Hari Om, and greetings from Niagara Falls. Sanatana Dharma, now popularly described as Hinduism, the message, the methodology of Sanatana Dharma is Tat Tvam Asi. Tat Tvam Asi means Tat, infinity, Tvam, you, Asi, are. Infinity, you are. This is the message. The methodology is for us to know who we are in a relative sense, and then keep on knowing the absolute who we are also. First, I have to know Tvam, you, then I can know Tat, infinity. This methodology is beautifully and powerfully shared through Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, the first third of this scripture focuses on Tvam, getting to know you, the relative sense. The next third, chapters 7 through 12, focuses on Tat, on infinity, getting to know your absolute sense. And the last third, that is chapters 13 to 18, how do I unite my relative sense with the absolute sense? Who I feel you is with what I know infinity to be. This section is on Asi. Infinity, you are. In the circles of those who study and share Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13 is known to be the most complex chapter, the most challenging to be oriented towards. And Bhagavan Krishna, he knows this. And he knows that Prince Arjuna is feeling this also, which is why he shares a series of 20 virtues. The first is amanitvam, one who's living by humility. And he completes sharing these 20 virtues are vijnana. Jnana in this context is theory. Vijnana is application or experience. Bhagavan Krishna is sharing with Prince Arjuna, if you live for and by these virtues, then you will feel and experience infinity. This is how the Asi manifests. One of these virtues is vivikta desha sevitvam. Vivikta desha sevitvam. Sevitvam means to find. to resort to. Desha, a place. And vivikta means solitude. If one wants to shift from you to infinity, one of the virtues that needs to be invoked is resorting to a place of solitude. What I've shared thus far is more on the theory side. And I think a lot of you know what I've just described. Now I'm shifting to application, my own experience. I have lived in a traditional ashram for more than 2 years. In our ashram, the schedule, the discipline of the day was from 4 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. The students had to be in Mauna. And from 4 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., the students had to be in Mauna. Now, whether they were in Mauna or not is different. I went to the ashram very independently. I did not go there to make friends, to become a teacher. So I followed these disciplines. And if you calculate this out, that is half of our waking day. If one's day is 18 hours, in the ashram, one is in Mauna for 9 of these hours. Upon completing the Vedanta course, one of my batchmates, she had gone to the Hari Om ashram. There are 2 in Gujarat. One is in Surat, one is in Ahmedabad. And in these ashrams, you have to practice Mauna in an intense way where you are in a room by yourself. There's no natural daylight. The windows are locked. Food is served to you through a small drawer. Imagine prison, okay? But this is voluntary. And when I reference prison, I mean it. The door is locked from the outside. And you can be in this room for as long as you want, as long as it's based on a week. So 1 week or 2 weeks, 4 weeks, etc. So I tried. In 2009, before I had a conference to go to, I went to the Hari Om ashram in Surat. And for 168 hours, I was in this room by myself. I didn't hear anyone. I didn't see anyone. Day 3 of being in the Hari Om ashram, a revelation came to me that if they never open this door, I will be fine. I will be happy. Functionally, I have all I need. My physical needs are being met. There's some food. My safety needs are being met. I'm locked in. All else is within me. Mauna leads to manana, which leads to munihi. Mauna, manana, muni. In English, what these sentiments are, mauna is when you close your mouth. And not just your mouth. That's symbolic of all of our senses. But our mouth is dangerous. Our mouth is an organ of perception and response, correct? And so when I close my mouth, that helps me to open my mind. One who is engaged in manana is more open-minded. And this helps one to be a muni. Not the muni that we know in some TV serial, where their hand is on a stand right like this and their hair is tied in the back. I just came back from a soccer game. Muni means one who is quiet. Their lifestyle and all of their equipments are all quiet. They are inward looking for joy. Think of this practically. When my mouth is closed, I shared that means all of my senses of perception and response, there is less input then, correct? If you close your eyes right now, there's less input coming through your eyes. And if there's less input coming, there's less of a chance that you will go outwards for joy, that you will be an extrovert. I fondly remember hearing a message from Sri Surdas, who was grateful that he was blind because all he saw with his eyes closed was Bhagavan Krishna. Bhagavan Krishna as his grandchild. When we have less input, there's less of a chance to be distracted. So much so, in our retreats, by show of hands, how many of you have been part of our silence retreats before? Awesome. During our retreats, you are not allowed to read, you're not allowed to write, and what really shakes seekers is you're not allowed to engage in rituals. For myself, I chanted no prayers before I started speaking to you, correct? I'm not wearing a tilak right now. Because even with our rituals, we can subtly justify, this is why I'm eating this. This is why I am hearing this. With Mona, the idea is to shut down all input. And then we get into this flow of internalizing. What I have studied theoretically through Sanatana Dharma, Bhagavad Gita, what I have experienced in our ashram at an intense silence retreat, I've tried to share this with seekers. When we were meeting in person in our camps, part of our camps were 1 hour of mauna during the day. I remember at one camp in Washington, D.C., there was a group of high schoolers, and each high schooler had to go into a room by themselves. And after that hour, I would walk around with the bell, and everyone would come back. One person I forgot about. So he was in that room for a long time. Lucky him. The same with our yatras. The yatras that I facilitated, 1 full day, one is in Mauna. And now we have commenced our retreats. We just completed our 6th silence retreat. And I know everyone who's experienced Mauna, whether a camp or a yatra or a retreat, this is difficult, but meaningful. One gets to know who they are like they've never gotten to know who they are. And even though I have to facilitate this, so I have to manage Zoom and keep my eyes open and listen to our 2 young children, still, these retreats are very revealing to me. With all of this background, I'm sharing with you that we want this Mauna Manana Muni to be even more incorporated into every individual, every family, into our community, which is why this year we are beginning silence culture. When you think of a culture in terms of yogurt, that culture you have when it's mixed with milk, then that milk becomes part of that culture and vice versa, correct? If you think of kombucha, what's valuable in kombucha is the culture. It is not the fresh water and so on and so forth. Silence culture is our community's effort for silence to become part of our experiences, our equipments, and finally, if one reflects on Rishi Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, the last practice in yoga is samadhi. Samadhi means to well and fully place the ego into the spirit. Shared differently, it is to silence the ego. Once that ego is made silent, the ever-present, ever-potent, ever-peaceful silence that is you, we revel in that. With this orientation, that is all the discourse I'm going to offer, we're going to shift to our dialogue. Many have questions about mauna, about silence. I'm going to answer some of these questions. These questions have been submitted in advance for our silence retreats. Not everyone is accepted. Recently, someone applied for the silence retreat, and he was hoping to make friends in this retreat. And I told our organizers, he has a wrong understanding of what this retreat is going to be like. You have less friends in this retreat. So even in this workshop, this is not going to be an extrovert workshop where you put your hand up and you ask a question. We are going to maintain our quietude. During contemplation, do we do pancha kosha viveka and then remain in silence, or just be in silence straight away? Pancha kosha viveka is where one knows what one is not, and so stops identifying with that. We often learn that we have pancha kosha, 5 coverings on us, when in fact, we have 6. Our first covering is our experiences or lifestyle. Then we have 5 coverings, which traditionally we come to know as the body, breath, mind, intellect, ego. And if there's a covering, there has to be a center. That is the spirit, that is silent. So, in contemplation, and please engage in a lot of manana on this, the only practice in contemplation is where we observe the ego. For all of you who have been in the retreats with me and I share, purify your lifestyle. Relax the body, enjoy breathing, chant with the mind, inquire with the intellect. None of that is contemplation. That is all preparation for contemplation. Contemplation only happens at the ego level. I just used the word samadhi. It is to observe the ego. And when one fully observes the ego, one knows that they're not the ego. And that's where the ego is placed in the spirit. So we are to engage in all of the preparation to be ready for contemplation. And the completion of contemplation is meditation. That is not a verb, that is a noun. That is where tvam is asi with tat, that have united with infinity. So one is to engage in this pancha kosha viveka, and as you actually facilitate this, you will become more and more and more quiet, still, silent. Next. What am I supposed to do as a spiritual seeker if someone is not, I apologize, I have answered this question in our latest retreat. So I'm going to pause there and go to another one. How will I know that I'm ready to walk the path full time? Meaning quitting my full-time job. How do I measure that I'm ready? By show of hands, how many of you can relate to this question? The higher perspective. The difference between a part-time seeker and a full-time seeker is in how much of expectation and ego they have. How much of deservership and doership they have. Those who engage in karma yoga, they are part-time seekers. Part-time. Which means they're following with the right attitude, the right actions, but there's a lot of room for deservership and doership. Which is why after chapter 3, there's chapter 4 and then chapter 5. In chapter 4, you have to engage in the right attitude, right actions, but with less expectations. And in chapter 5, with less ego. That's where one becomes a full-time seeker. Now remember, this has nothing to do with a job, yes? Please do not make this context-based. With our children, who are 2.5 and 4.5, everything that we do takes so long. Like just to go outside to shovel the driveway, go to the bathroom, put your pants on, make sure you have a snack, your boots are on the wrong way. It takes so long. And today I was frustrated. Sundays are a demanding day, lots of meetings and so on. And when we were finally outside and I was shoveling the driveway, I felt bad, not sad, but bad that I was frustrated. What does context have to do with what my mind is feeling right now? And because of all of you, I'm ever engaged in self-criticism and self-forgiveness. Me feeling bad was very quickly changed into what a revelation. I am irresponsible. I'm using context as the reason for my frustration. Now I know more clearly that that's not valid. And I was able to quieten my mind because of this insight. So please keep that in mind in terms of any context, your job, your family, your country, etc., etc., etc. Now, the lower perspective to this, live simply. Whether you've asked this question or not, every one of us can live more simply. And what are some measures of that? What we do with our resources, time, and effort. Those are the 3 things that we can give away: resources, time, and effort. If your resources, time, and effort are directed towards more pleasure, possession, and position, that means you don't have enough to be directed towards peace. But if you start pulling back, that I'm not going to use resources for pleasure and so on and so forth, all of that is now being directed towards peace, yes? Live simply. And in your specific context, take a demotion. I'm often That is my first strategy to professionals, is take a demotion. That way you're living more simply and you have more to offer towards peace. One more question. As long as we are living as a human being, we need to follow the rules or ways of living of the transactional world. As I deepen my sadhana and move closer to becoming enlightened, how important are the rules of the transactional world for me? Are these rules not pulling me back to BMI? It feels like a tightrope walk. How does one balance? This is probably what all questions from everyone come to, knowing how to navigate the Maya world while continuing the sadhana to become enlightened. What lovely questions. I'm fond of our silence retreats because these questions are intense. They're intense. Rules are for children. I shared that this week. When I say do this or don't do that, that is for those who lack maturity. That's why I'm using children. They are not reflecting, so you have to reflect for them. But as one becomes more mature, it's not about don't do this and do this. The idea is do what is right. And see, I'm using the word do again. The idea is that you have to know what is right and follow that. Bhagavan Krishna did not share with Prince Arjuna don'ts and do's. Prince Arjuna is not struggling with a capability crisis. He is struggling with an identity crisis. He doesn't know who he is, so he doesn't know what to do. And Bhagavan Krishna teaches, Tvam tat asi. So, as you become more enlightened, it is not that you don't follow the rules, but what happens is you are less affected by those rules. If you follow them, fine. If you happen not to follow them, that's fine too, because you don't need them. For someone who's physically unhealthy, the food they eat has a great effect on them. For someone who's very healthy, then really they can eat anything and still be fine. Yes? That's why one of Bhagavan Narayana's names is Vrikodara. Udara means stomach, and Vrika means wolf. His stomach is like a wolf. A wolf is an animal that can digest anything. Fur, bones, etc. So Bhagavan Narayana is like that too. We should be like that too. Now, a lower perspective. Follow the rules, not for you, but for everyone who's following you. In chapter 3, Bhagavan Krishna shares, I don't need to follow the rules. I created the rules. But I still follow them because everyone is following me. Yes? So you should do that because as you're becoming more enlightened, you feel that the person next to you is you, correct? And if you don't feel that, then are you becoming more enlightened? So reflect on that. I'm going to share briefly some announcements. We've completed our dialogue, some announcements. Then your Ram. I told you this is a culture. This has to become part of us. And then we are going to practice together. I will guide and we'll practice together. Here are our announcements. On March 1st, in Meaningful Mornings, we are going to expand our satsang. We're going to expand our gathering. Right now, the plan is from 7:15 to 7:30, there is going to be Vedic chanting. That is to encourage us to learn to concentrate. Vedic chanting is an awesome way to learn to concentrate. 7:30 to 7:45 will be class. This is us collaborating, coming together, remembering Bhagavan Krishna. And what's special about March 1st, it is Mahashivaratri, and I will begin teaching chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, the chapter that focuses on dhyana, contemplation. And 7:45 to 8, we will have contemplation. Concentration, collaboration, contemplation. So Meaningful Mornings is going to become more expansive. This is going to be continued for 47 days straight. That means weekends also. There are 47 verses in chapter 6. We will complete this directly. And what's really, really, really amazing about this, to my calculation, we will complete chapter 6 on Bhagavan Rama's Jayanti. Bhagavan Hanumana's Jayanti. So from Mahashivaratri to Bhagavan Hanumana's Jayanti, we will engage in chapter 6. Our next silence culture workshop, like we're doing right now, will be on March 6th. March 6th. Our team right now is trying to come up with a plan where only those who have been part of our silence retreats can become part of silence culture. Because there's a shared experience there. So we're trying to figure out when to implement this. It may not be for March, in which case everyone can join, but certainly after our next retreat, only those who have been part of a silence retreat with me can be part of silence culture. And a reason for this is we want everyone who's part of silence culture to raise their expectations of themselves. What one seeker shared with me is practicing concentration, collaboration, contemplation should be non-negotiable. And I feel anyone who's been part of a retreat knows that this is non-negotiable. So all of those who have registered, please stay tuned with whatever kind of policy we come up with. And my last announcement, our next silence retreat is going to be April 29th to May 1st. April 29th to May 1st. This retreat will not be 50 hours, it will be 57 hours. We will start earlier on Friday and end later on Sunday. The idea is when we have our 4th retreat this year in October, it will be 75 hours. So each retreat, we're essentially adding 7 or 8 hours to get to that. Not 75, but 72. My apologies. 72 hours. We're building up to that. So April 29th to May 1st. Keep that in your radar. Registration will begin 1 month earlier. Usually registration lasts 4 hours. That's how quickly everyone registers. So make note of that. Here is your RAM, your reflection adventure of the month until our next silence culture workshop. Our silence retreats are 50 hours. What I would like for you to do is practice 50 minutes of mauna every day until we gather again in 4 weeks. Every day, 50 minutes of mauna. What are you doing with mauna? Mouth closed, mind open, which means sleep doesn't count. Yes? Yes. During our retreats, you're not allowed to lie down. You're not allowed to nap. So one has to be active in practicing these 50 minutes. Okay? Now our practice. To be able to contemplate, which is for the intellect. I have been using the word ego. The ego and intellect are highly intertwined. The ego doesn't know how to talk. Its first talking happens in the intellect. The sense of doership lives in the intellect. But to do that, one first has to be able to manage their mind. That's collaboration. To do that, one has to first manage their body. That is concentration. I'm going to read a story to you. While I'm reading, listen. No reading, no writing, no rituals. Unitask. And while I'm reading, with your eyes open. We're not contemplating right now. We are only concentrating. This is a chapter from Peace is Every Step. This chapter is entitled Aimlessness. Listen, unitask, concentrate. In the West, we are very goal-oriented. We know where we want to go, and we are very directed in getting there. This may be useful, but often we forget to enjoy ourselves along the route. There is a word in Buddhism that means wishlessness or aimlessness. The idea is that you do not put something in front of you and run after it, because everything is already here in yourself. While we practice walking meditation, we do not try to arrive anywhere. We only make peaceful, happy steps. If we keep thinking of the future, of what we want to realize, we will lose our steps. The same is true with sitting meditation. We sit just to enjoy our sitting. We do not sit in order to attain any goal. This is quite important. Each moment of sitting meditation brings us back to life, and we should sit in a way that we enjoy our sitting for the entire time we do it. Whether we're eating a tangerine, drinking a cup of tea, or walking in meditation, we should do it in a way that is aimless. Often we tell ourselves, don't just sit there, do something. But when we practice awareness, we discover something unusual. We discover that the opposite may be more helpful. Don't just do something, sit there. We must learn to stop from time to time in order to see clearly. At first, stopping may look like a kind of resistance to modern life, but it is not. It is not just a reaction, it is a way of life. Humankind's survival depends on our ability to stop rushing. We have more than 50,000 nuclear bombs, and yet we cannot stop making more. Stopping is not only to stop the negative, to allow positive healing to take place. That is the purpose of our practice. Not to avoid life, but to experience and demonstrate that happiness in life is possible now and also in the future. The foundation of happiness is mindfulness. the basic condition for being happy is our consciousness of being happy. If we are not aware that we are happy, we are not really happy. When we have a toothache, we know that not having a toothache is a wonderful thing. But when we do not have a toothache, we are still not happy. A non-toothache is very pleasant. There are so many things that are enjoyable, but when we don't practice mindfulness, we don't appreciate them. When we practice mindfulness, we come to cherish these things and we learn how to protect them. By taking good care of the present moment, we take good care of the future. Working for peace in the future is to work for peace in the present moment. We will deepen our practice from concentration to collaboration. If it's easy for you, please procure a piece of paper or a book and a pen or a pencil. We are going to practice likita japa, that is meaningful repetition in writing. If it's too hard for you to find the paper and the pen, I want you to imagine that you're doing this. For those who are more oriented towards Bharatiya culture, what I want you to write is Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namaha Shivaya. For those who have less of this orientation, I want you to write, I am joy. I am joy. Write it, physically or imagining it, and say it, and think it. Bring your actions and words and thoughts together. Integrate them. Practice. Write it, say it, think it. Please complete your last japa. You can put your pen down, close your book. Concentration helps the body to be calm. Collaboration helps the mind to be quiet. And contemplation is to help the intellect to become still so that the intellect is still subconscious. When it becomes still, we can see what's beneath it, which is the unconscious, the ego. The ego makes us feel small. Anatma. And the more I observe the ego, I come to see that there's more that's beneath the ego. That observation helps this smallness to be dismantled, and I rediscover feeling bigness, Brahman, infinity. We will now practice contemplation, keeping in mind workshop after workshop, retreat after retreat. All will become more intense. Many of you have not been to a silence retreat, so all that I'm sharing with you is newer. And so just like a flower cannot be forced to open, but naturally has to open, know that month after month, our practice will become more intense. Sit comfortably. Your head, neck, and back are in a line. Inhale through your nose. Exhale through your nose. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. And now as you exhale, rest your eyes. Keep them closed. For the next while, take the sankalpa. Promise yourself that you will keep the body completely calm. That you will not move the body at all. For the next while, take the sankalpa. Promise yourself that you will keep the mind completely quiet. That you will follow my words. Imagine waking up in a forest. As you come up off the ground of the forest floor, you see endless leaves and branches and trees and shrubs and stones. See this, feel this. You don't know where you are, so you slowly turn around. And in every direction you see, the same. More of the forest. You are surrounded. And though you are alone, you do not feel lonely. You feel safe. You feel sound. Suddenly, a cool breeze blows at you from behind, as if encouraging you to walk. And so you do. You're pushing aside branches, stepping over stones. You feel the moist grass on your bare feet. You're breathing in the freshness of the forest. Feel the water. Feel the air. You keep walking and walking. As you look ahead, you see a strange clearing in the forest, an area with less trees, less shrubs. You get to the edge of the clearing, unsure of what this is, and as you look into the clearing, you see an old grayish building. You are drawn to this. With no stress, no fear, you step into the clearing and walk towards this old grayish building. When you get there are large stone steps that are leading to the entrance of the building. You carefully walk these stairs. And when you arrive at the top, you understand that this is a mandir, a temple. Inside is dark, other than two large bright lamps. And in the middle, a murti, an icon. You're unsure of whose mandir this is. You slowly walk into the darkness. The air is more humid. And then you get to the altar and you see Bhagavan Shiva in pure white marble. His long hair is carved. His broad chest is carved. His legs crossed is carved. You have never seen such a murti icon before. And overwhelmed by this, you can't help but close your eyes. And for some reason, you open your eyes and you see that Bhagavan Shiva, as a murti, as an icon, has come to life, is stretching his arms and his legs, comes off the pedestal, and is walking towards you. He stretches his arms and fingers, and when he is right in front of you, you can feel his heat, his breath. He wraps his strong arms around your back, puts one hand on the back of your head, and places your head on his shoulder. And he whispers to you, Aste, rest. For you are now one with Asti, existence. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Continue to be safe, to be sound, to be serene, to be Shiva.